Hello, this is the second class for Maya. Today we'll be learning how to create a new project, where we'll be saving the scene, how to put references in our scene, and how to use them correctly. So first things first, I'm just gonna open up Maya as I've just had here. These are the first things we see is some other scenes that we've created before, and what we want to do is to create a new one. Press new. And here we have the new scene that is empty currently. If we want to create a project with this scene, as we would want with all scenes that we create from the beginning, we will create a project from File, and then we have two options: set project window and set project. Set project is used when we already have a project created and it is somewhere located in our computer and we just want to open it or set it, and project window is the one we use when we want to create it. In order to create a new project, we just press on the button that says new and name our project. We'll be making a simple rocket today, so I'm just going to type in rocket. And below we have the location and where it is going to be located. We can change it currently, but I'm gonna leave it the same. It is in users, your name, your user, documents, Maya, and projects. I'm gonna click on accept. And I'm gonna open that folder just to see it. This is the folder that was created. We named it Rocket, and inside we have a lot of folders, subfolders for that specific scene. The two we'll learn today are the source images and the scenes. In source images, we're going to add the reference we want to use to create our rocket. So I have it on my desktop. I'm just gonna drag it in, and we can see it's there. In order to load that reference, we are going to have to learn how to create a reference. It is very easy. Under the create menu, we have the free image plane. If I just left click, we have a bunch of options on the right in the attribute editor. If you have channel box opened, feel free to open the attribute editor, and in the image name on the folder, click and select the reference. It is automatically opened, the source image folder right here. We press on the reference and we press open. We can see the reference inside of Maya. What I'm gonna do is just move it a little bit to the back. Why? Because we're gonna be creating our rocket right here in the middle, and we don't want it to be obscuring our vision. So I've just put in my reference, and what I want to do first is create a save. How are we going to create a save? And there's multiple ways, but the most common is just pressing Control and Save on your keyboard. Like I said before, this is the scenes folder that's going to be used as well. The scenes is where we're going to create our scene. The correct naming convention for scenes is usually just the name of the scene or what we're building, and then we're gonna go _01. That is our first save. Just so when we can make a second save, we're gonna name it rocket02, and so on and so on. I'm gonna press save as, and here in the top left we see rocket01 MB. That is Maya binary for the scene. We already inserted our first reference, and as we learned in the previous class, if we press space, we have multiple views. We have the top view, the front view, and the side view. So first things first, when I moved it along the z-axis, and we can see clearly that it is flat or two-dimensional on the top and the side, and it is clearly visible on the front. So that means that this here is the front view that we're going to use for the reference. I am going to hide the grid just so it doesn't bother us for a second, so we can see the reference. We have here on the top left side the top view, the side view on the bottom left, the back view on the top right, and on the bottom right we have the front view. That's the one we want to insert here, and what we want to do is we want to align it in the center so that we can, when we create stuff, we mirror them and it's much easier for us. All right, so I'm going to move along this axis. Once I have an axis selected that I want to move, I don't have to pay attention to the arrow. I can move it anywhere with the middle mouse button. It basically controls the last thing we used for moving, or the same axis. All right, so what I want to do is align the reference correctly as much as I can in the center, so it doesn't have any we don't have any problems later on with having it mirrored onto two sides. Right, I think this looks good. If sometimes the reference is different, it is not the same on the left and right side, we mostly pay attention on one side and try to align it with that one and automatically keep it mirrored on the right side. Even though it won't align perfectly with the reference, it will still be clearly symmetrical. Okay, move it here. This is the one I want to use. There we go, right in the center. So I'm going to go back to the perspective view. What I can do is just move it to the back even further. So for clarity, in the front view, as we can see, while moving, it doesn't change anything. I'm going to create a copy of it, or a duplicate, by holding the Shift key. And I'm going to rotate it by holding J for 90 degrees. So we can use the side. Here we have, this one is the side view now. So we're going to have to align the side view. What are we going to do? We're never going to use the y-axis this time because it is already perfectly aligned with the front view as with the side view here. So what we're going to do is just align it in the center here. Right? As much as we can in the center. So that is the side view. We have to pay attention to certain things, like here, for example, the front view is facing the z-axis in the plus, but if we look at the side view, the little windows here are facing the opposite way. So what we're going to have to do is, unfortunately, we're going to have to flip it to the other side or rotate it for 180 degrees and then adjust it again so that the windows point the same way as the windows on the front. That is one of the most common mistakes when placing references. I'm going to zoom in and with middle mouse button align it in the center. Okay, firstly we're going to do these, and then the last one is we're going to use just the top view. I'm going to hold Shift to make a duplicate and rotate it facing upwards for 90 degrees. Once I move through the side to the top view, I'm gonna just adjust it a little lower so it's below the grid. Push this one to the back even further, and we'll move back to the top view. Try again just to put it in the middle so it's as symmetrical as it can be. Okay, I think this is pretty good. Okay, we pay attention again. Front view, windows facing Z plus, side view, windows facing Z plus, and top view, windows facing Z plus. So I think that the reference is well placed for now. What we're gonna do is we don't want to accidentally move these references in the future. So what we want to do is we just want to lock them in some way that we can't touch them. That is done in the channel box. So when we select them, we can just press on the most, and here is the layers menu that we can use, and the most right button is where we create a new layer, and automatically it adds the subjects that we have selected. So I'm going to select all of them. We can see they're selected in the outliner, and press the most right button. That is automatically creates a layer. What can we do with this layer? We can press on the V button. What V does is turns it on and off, makes everything visible or invisible. But in the most right square, we can press it two times to make it locked. So once we're gonna see it's gonna disappear and it shows us a T, but if we press it one more time, it's gonna be R, restricted, so we cannot touch it. That is the first part. And once we have this reference created and locked, we can continue on and we can make just another save. So if we want to just save in the same Maya file as previously, we're just gonna press Ctrl S, and I accidentally pressed Ctrl A as well. Ctrl S to save. We're gonna see the little asterisk here disappear when we press Ctrl S. That means it's saved. And if we want to make a new save, we can just Ctrl Shift S, and it's gonna create save as. And we're gonna write the number 2 here, and this is our second save for today. Okay, so we would like to start creating this little rocket. So how am I gonna start? I'm just gonna start with a simple sphere. I'm gonna hold Shift right click to enter the creating polygon menu, and I'm gonna create a simple sphere. I'm gonna go from the front view. This time I don't need the grid as much, so I'm just gonna hide it. And I'm gonna start stretching the sphere to get the correct shape of the rocket. What we don't want to do, we don't want to, when we're scaling the rocket in the y-axis, it's okay just to scale it in the y-axis. But when we're scaling it to reach the width of the rocket, we don't want to use just this x-axis, because if we do and do it something like this, and gonna change back to the perspective view, I'm gonna see it's flat. We don't want it to be flat, so I'm gonna go back, and we want to rotate it for all 3 axes. I'm gonna go back to the front view and scale it up. Scale down on Y. I can see it's a little too much. I've put correctly their sides, but I haven't gotten the top, so I'm just gonna scale a little bit of Y as well. So right now I cannot see anything behind the model, and if I want to do that, what we can do is we can open the X-ray mode, which is located right here. It says X-ray, and we can see the model and when it's selected and everything behind. But what if it's not selected? It's kind of hard to see. That's when we want to use the wireframe on shaded right here. If we press wireframe on shaded, we're gonna see the edges on the model clearly without it being selected. Okay, so right now I have the basic shape created. I'm gonna lower it a little bit more and a little bit like this. Since I have that, I can move on to the next part. What I can do, I can use a cylinder to create the bottom of the rocket. So Shift right click, cylinder, and move it down a little bit. I'm gonna zoom in for extra precision and scale it with Y to fit this part here. If I want to scale it now, I can use the middle part where I'm gonna scale it for all 3 axes, which is gonna be a little hard because it also uses the Y as well. What I can also do is go back to the perspective view. As I mentioned before, click on to scale on these 2 axes, the X and the Z only, because this is what we need, right? But since I can't see the front view here, I'm just gonna click on it and use the middle mouse button from the front view. So even though it looks like I'm only scaling it in the X-axis, it actually scales in all, just by using the middle mouse button. Okay, I created this part. I want to create the bottom part of the same cylinder, so I'm just going to use the extrude function. Right click, change to faces first. Like we learned in the first class, we select multiple things while holding the shift click, so I can just keep clicking them one by one. But as we can see, this takes a lot of time, especially if we, for example, have to select 100+ faces. So what's an easier option is while holding the tab. If I hold tab on the keyboard, and I can just paint over the faces that I want to use. See, it's as easy as that. I'm going to do it one more time. Hold tab, click on one face and hold the mouse button and tab and just paint which faces I want to have selected. Now I want to extrude, move back to the front view, change to the move tool, hold shift and the arrow key to extrude until I have to. And then I'm gonna scale with all three axes. It's not gonna destroy my the way that it looks. Why? Because this time I'm scaling only the faces that are in the same Y position. So it's not gonna, for example, destroy it like it did here above. Right? I can zoom out and we have that part of the rocket created. The next thing we want to create is this here cubes, or let's say, that connect these little engines to the rocket. So creating a cube, shift right click and below for cube. Have it here. I'm gonna lower it down somewhere over here, zoom in a little bit and rotate holding J. It doesn't align us perfectly, so I'm just gonna do it freehand and rotate it normally. I think this is good. Usually if we have problems like this where we want to scale it, but let's just say that the scale options are the same as the move options, we are not going to be able to scale it. So how can we change the scale options? Right now, our move options, you can see no matter where I rotate the object, they point in the directions of the world, the same as we can see down here. But if I move to the scale options, we have, they are not aligned to the world, but they're aligned to the object. We can change that right here. So for every tool, it is different. It's going to be different. For example, move and rotate and scale are for the object, and move is for the world. So I want to, let's just say, change the move and not move it with the world axis, but move it with the object axis. I'm going to double click right here where the move tool is. And you have a new set of options, the tool settings here. And this is where we change it in the axis orientation. Right now we have the world. If I press the drop down menu, we have object, world, component, and many others. These are the most useful three. Usually component is when we have specific faces, vertices, or edges selected. And usually we use world or object for whole objects. If I change to the object, we see it changes for the axis of the object. Right now I'm gonna go back to world here and I'm gonna change to scale, open the settings and see that we have our axis orientation is on world. I'm gonna scale it up a bit using the y-axis for that specific object and move it as well. Like I said, I'm gonna change here world to object because it's easier. It doesn't mess up my alignment. Right? I think this is good enough. I'll change a little more so that this part is not gonna be a problem. It's gonna be hidden inside the engine, and this part is already hidden in the rocket. We can use the X-ray to see where it is located. I'm gonna turn it off right now and go back. I've already created the front view for this. These two are not a problem for checking other sides because they're already created in the center, and we already only used the 3 dimensions to scale them. So the top and the side are should be perfectly placed as well. We can see here that the reference moves a little bit. So I'm just gonna unlock the reference, click it and move it up a little bit. There we go. Perfect. Like that. I'm gonna lock it back again, click twice, and I'm gonna use the X-ray mode to move the cube. The wireframe on shaded also and the X-ray also work on each view differently. For example, on the front view I can see that I have turned on wireframe on shaded and ghost, but on the top view I do not have ghost turned on. I'm sorry, I do not have wireframe on shaded turned on. I do have X-ray turned on. I'm gonna turn wireframe on shaded as well and turn off the grid. Like here it's turned off, here it's not. I'm gonna do it here as well. Right, the location is good. I'm just gonna scale it down a bit and move it. I'm gonna leave it in the center, and I'm gonna pay attention to the bottom line this time, so it's symmetrical, because I already know that even if I turn on the grid, it's right in the center of it. I hold X to check where it snaps. We can also use this to align the object. You can see that it was a little bit moved to the side. I'm just gonna move it to the center. All right, that's perfect. Scale it a little bit like this so it matches everything clearly. All right, next up, we're gonna create the little rocket on the side. How are we going to do that? What we want to do usually in 3D is time is our biggest enemy. So what we want to do is we want to use things that we've already have created to our advantage, so we don't have to waste time creating them again. For example, I can see that this bottom part here, it's the same shape as this bottom part of the main rocket that we used. So I'm just gonna copy it or make a duplicate while holding Shift and try to align it in the center. Gonna put it lower, and this time I'm just gonna scale it for all 3 axes. Okay. Once I have it good on these 2 sides, I'm gonna move it lower where this row of edges is good. What I want to do here is I want to put this part to the lowest part and align it perfectly with the reference. However, we always have to be careful with cylinders in this case, because if we use edges, the ones that we see here, and we try to move them, if we select only the edges and not the faces, we can see that there's a little bit inside that's a problem. Why? Because that little vertex in the middle of everything is creating the problem. So what we can do without changing views, we can use the vertices. Select all the vertices and just put them lower and scale them down with all 3 axes. Same thing with the upper ones as well. Select all the vertices and move them to the upmost position. Creating this part, keep in mind you shouldn't do this with vertices, putting it up, because if you hold to extrude vertices, it's gonna create this interesting shape and a lot of extra vertices we don't need. So I'm gonna go back, change to faces, and select the highest faces. Another way we can do this without changing to the perspective view while still being only in the front view is we can change to faces, select the faces up above, but it also selects these, so we're gonna have to keep in mind to deselect them while holding Control. And now I only have the top faces selected. Now hold move to the move tool, extrude a little bit to the top and scale it down. I'm gonna make another extrude up until the top part. Okay. For example, like if this happens, if I want, let's just say this to be a little bit extruded, sorry, a little bit wider, I can just select all the faces, move to the front view, change the scale, click on only these 2 axes for scale, move back, and with the middle mouse button, scale them up a bit. Okay, move the whole rocket a little bit to the right. I feel like it should be more centered that way. There we go. And for this part, just so we can introduce a new simple shape, I'm going to use a cone. Click on the cone and move it to the side. So it's perfectly aligned with the bottom part of the rocket. I can hold the V, like we learned, to snap to a vertex. So holding V, I'm gonna snap to any of these. We snap, like we remember, we snap by pointing at the vertices. It doesn't matter where your mouse is. Right here, if we hold V, we have to point to the vertex we want the object to be aligned with. I'm gonna push it down a bit and scale it as well. Try to get the same size as the rocket first, at the bottom part of the rocket first, and then when I have these vertices aligned with these edges, I'm just gonna scale it down, move it down, scale it down, move it down until I get the shape that I want. Like here. Change to the front view, sorry, to the perspective view to see how it looks, and it's okay. I can move it a little bit higher. All right, that is our little rocket. This whole thing is the part of the rocket. As we can see on the reference, we have 2 more of the same. Like I mentioned previously, we're going to try to save as much time as we can, so we don't want to create these 2 from scratch again. What we want to do is just make duplicates of these and move them here. Best way to do this is not to move them piece by piece. It's best to put them in a group. We create groups by pressing selecting the objects first and then pressing Ctrl G. Once we have created pressed Ctrl G, on the outliner we have group 1. So I'm immediately gonna change the name of it by double clicking it and changing it to engine, or even better, engine _ 01. Now I can see that immediately when we create a group, the pivot or the starting part of the axis is in the middle of the world. So what I can do is just press E or rotate, and I'm gonna make duplicates while holding the shift and rotating a little bit. Instead of doing this and trying to align them, I can do 2 things. First one is hold J while creating it with shift and align it there. If it's not perfect, hold J and move back. Best to do it in the top view. Or I can just make a duplicate, shift D, and change the from 0, for example, to 180. And it's going to change it on the other side. This would be 90, here would be 270, and so on. But what if we don't want to do it multiple times? We just want to do it once and then do the same thing again without changing a lot of things. What we can do is when we create a duplicate with shift D, the next things we do, now we have it created, the next movements that we do, Maya remembers those. So for example, if I rotate it for 90 degrees while holding J, oh, sorry, that moved. While holding J, now it's rotated for 90 degrees. What I can do, I don't have to create another duplicate and then rotate another 90 degrees. It remembers that we created a group and we rotated for 90 degrees. And if I press Shift D again for another duplicate, that duplicate, it's gonna mimic it and move on once again 90 degrees. And if we press Shift D one more time, it's going to create another one, and it's going to move here for another 90 degrees. It just remembers the transformations that we made. We don't want this one here, so I'm going to just go back. Remember, when we do this, we can make as many as we want, but we can't make any other movements in between or any other clicks. So, for example, let's just say I want this sphere to make 50 in a row. I'm going to press Shift D, move it, and if I want all 50 to be moved that way for this same distance, I'm just gonna keep on clicking Shift D, and it's gonna keep on creating them for the same distance. This is going to be very often used later on. Okay, we created most of the rocket. I'm just gonna name everything here. I'm gonna say this is the body, and this one here, cylinder, is gonna be the main _ engine. Right, last thing that we have to do are the windows. We create them from little cylinders as well. Create a cylinder, push it up. I can't see anything. I'm going to turn on the X-ray mode and rotate it right here and rotate it a little bit. I'm going to do it freehand. Like I said, do it freehand. I'm gonna use this part here, this line of the rotation tool, to try to and get the same alignment with the window. I think this is good. Okay, gonna scale it down, move it here. Well, even though this looks like this, that is because, well, we'll see in a little bit. Let me just scale it up so we can get the same size. Right, there we go. And it's right here. Why do we have this line here? We don't create it right now, but if we turn on the grid, it's not going to show. Here, however, it will show. That is this line. Because of the shapes that they're different, it's just going to change them like that. Okay, this is going to be well hidden. Don't worry about that part. Gonna go back to the side view and create another part for this part here. Just gonna duplicate this window while holding shift and scale it down and adjust the positioning of it. Okay, this is perfect. That's one window, and we can use this window to move it down as well, to create the lower one as well. We can just duplicate, we can group this and call it window underscore 01. We make a duplicate, it automatically names it window underscore 02. So right, like I said before, when we group things, it moves the axis in the middle. What we want to do is we want to change that. This part here is called the pivot. To change the location of the pivot to be in the center of these two. How do we do that? We go to modify and we go center pivot. Now it's in the center. I'm gonna move it down a bit and try to get the same positioning. Now change to world here. World. Turn it off and scale it down. All right, change the move axis orientation to world as well. Rotate it a little more. We have one of the cylinders well placed, and just select the others and adjust it as well. Okay, and there we have created a little low poly rocket. What else we can do in the meantime? We can add some colors. How do we add colors to these things, to these shapes? It's very simple. We firstly have to select the object that we want to add a color. Gonna have right click, and in the bottom part we have new material, favorite material, and existing material. This is Lambert 1. This is the material that all of the objects use, this grayish color. Right click, assign favorite material, and we have multiple. For example, Lambert is the one that is used. It is least reflective. We also have Blin that is a little bit more reflective. So let's just use those two for now. The main body is not going to be reflective, so we're going to put a new Lambert here. And as we can see on the right side in the attribute editor, we have Lambert 2. That's where it's created. So Lambert name, I'm gonna change the name of the Lambert to, for example, white, and change the color right here in color. And we can use multiple things, like we can adjust the colors like with the HSV sliders, or we can just click on sample colors here, like white. But if we want to use the same color as in the reference, we can just use the color picker and just aim and click. And there we have it. This is now white, or well, we can say not pure white, but a little bit like dirty white. Lower here, we don't use the same color, so we're just gonna create a new Lambert. It's also not shiny. Change the color, color picker, and here we have a dark gray. Dark gray. That's British English. Gray like that. Gray American English. And this one, for example, is gonna have the light gray. What we can do is we can just select all three, right click on them, assign favorite material, Lambert, and change it to the gray that is behind there. Click the color picker and change that way. I'm gonna change it to light gray. Well, let's just say, for example, I don't want to click all of them at the same time and do everything. So I just want to assign this here. So let's just say we want to create a red color. Create one of them, not all of them at the same time. Click on one and create a new favorite material, Lambert. Change the name to red and change the color using the color picker to this little light red. So if I want to use the same color on the other ones, I can just click, shift, click, click, shift, click, click, right click, and then use existing material. And here we have the ones we created today: dark gray, light gray, red, white, and the original Lambert one, which we should never change the settings to. Leave it as it is always. Press, hold on red, let go, right mouse button, and they all change to red. Okay. We can see that these parts here are also the same as this one below. They're dark gray. So right click, existing material, dark gray. And for the windows, we're going to use a reflective one. Let's just use the blend as seen before. When I change the blend, we're going to see it change a little bit. Unlike the other parts, we can see that the windows are a little bit more reflective here. Okay, and select both of them, new material, blend. It is already created. So what we're going to do is just change here to the setting blend in the attribute editor and change the color to the one in the reference, light blue or sky blue. Okay, so in conclusion, what did we learn today? We learned how to create a project, how to put a reference in that project folder, how to put a reference inside the Maya file, how to save, how to correctly position the reference, how to turn on and off the grid, X-ray mode as well, and how to model a little rocket. We also have how to make groups, the power of Shift D and multiple duplications, and how to add new materials or new colors to meshes. All right, that is it for today.